Welcome to the Explainer. Now, if you're in the tech world, all the legal jargon can feel like you're trying to learn a whole new programming language. But look, whether you're building the next big app or just cramming for an exam, you really can't afford to ignore it. So today, we're going to decode the essential legal principles you absolutely need to know. Okay, let's just dive right in with a real-world example. Take a look at these terms. Trespass to chattels, trademark dilution. I mean, what even is that, right? Well, these are all actual legal claims from a massive tech lawsuit, eBay versus Bidder's Edge. They might look pretty intimidating right now, but I promise you, by the time we're done here, you're going to understand the foundational ideas behind every single one of them. So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we're going to tackle the big question: what even is law? Then we'll slice it up into its main branches. That's criminal, civil, and public law. After that, we'll peek under the hood to see how the whole system actually works. And then we'll get into the really tricky stuff, that gray area where law and ethics collide. And to make sure it all sticks, we'll wrap it up with a quick pop quiz. All right, section 1. Let's start at the very beginning and build our foundation. What is law? And really, why do we even have it in the first place? So, what is law? At its absolute core, it's just a set of rules that a court can enforce. The fundamental idea here is that, look, we all hope people will do the right thing, but hope is not a system. Law steps in to provide security, to ensure some form of justice, and to create the basic order we need for society to even function. It's the framework that keeps things from falling apart. Okay, now that we have a handle on what law is, let's break it down into its three main categories. Getting these distinctions down is absolutely crucial. First on our list is criminal law. Now, the key thing to get here is that a crime isn't just a wrong against a single person. It's seen as an offense against the entire community, against the state. That's why when someone hacks a federal database, for example, it's not just the database owner that gets involved. The government itself, the state, steps in to prosecute because the act is seen as a threat to everyone's safety and order. Next up, we have civil law, which you'll sometimes hear called private law. And this is a completely different ballgame. This isn't the state versus an individual. It's individual versus individual, or maybe company versus company. So think about a freelance coder suing a client who won't pay them, or one tech company suing another over a broken contract. It's all about settling disputes between private parties. And wow, as you can see, civil law is a massive field. It covers so much. It includes the law of torts, which deals with civil wrongs, think online defamation, or a company's negligence leading to a data breach. Then there's contract law, which is all about whether a promise is legally binding, super important in tech. You've also got property law, which is huge for us because it includes intellectual property, things like code, patents, and trademarks. It also covers things you might not expect, like family law and the law of succession, which handles inheritance. So our third major branch is public law, and this is all about the rules for the government itself. It really breaks down into two main parts. On one side, you have constitutional law. This is the big picture blueprint for how the government is structured and operates. And on the other side, you've got administrative law. This is more about the day-to-day rules created by all those government agencies, like the FTC or the SEC, that affect our lives and businesses. Okay, so now we know the main types of law. But how does this whole system actually, work? Let's get into the actual rules of the game. This next distinction is so important, so really lean in here. Substantive versus procedural law. The easiest way to think about it is this. Substantive law is the what's. It's the law that defines our rights and duties. It says, for example, you have a right to your copyrighted code. Procedural law, on the other hand, is the how. It's the set of rules that dictates the exact steps you have to follow to enforce that right, like the deadlines and paperwork for filing a copyright infringement lawsuit. So where do all these rules even come from? Well, mainly two places. On the left, you've got common law. This is law that's built up over time by judges. When a judge makes a decision in a new kind of case, say one involving AI, that ruling can become a precedent that guides all future similar cases. Then, on the right, you have statute law. This is the law that's written down and passed by politicians in a legislature. Think of things like the GDPR or the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Now, a court can't just decide to hear any case it wants to. It needs something called jurisdiction, which is basically the official authority to make a legal ruling. And that authority has all kinds of limits. It can be limited by geography, the territorial part. It can be limited by the amount of money involved in the case, that's pecuniary. Or it can be limited by whether it's the first court to hear the case, original, or if it's just reviewing a decision from a lower court, which we call appellate jurisdiction. Okay, we've covered the mechanics, the how it works. But there's a much deeper layer here that we have to explore. That really complex and important intersection between what is legal and what is ethical. And this really is the central question, isn't it? Just because you can do something legally, does that automatically mean you should do it? The law basically sets the floor for acceptable behavior, not the ceiling. This matrix just lays it out so clearly. Look at the top left box. Firing an employee who isn't performing. It's generally legal, and in a business context, it's often considered ethical. Now jump to the bottom right, planting a computer virus. Clearly illegal and clearly unethical. No debate there. But the really juicy parts are those other two boxes. Top right, not citing your sources. It might not always be illegal, but it's definitely unethical academic practice. And then there's the bottom left, the real tricky one. Copying software for a personal backup. Your intention feels ethical, right? You just want to be safe. But if that license agreement you clicked agree on says no, copying, then it's not legal. All right, I know that was a lot of information. So let's do a really quick pop quiz to see what stuck. You ready? Okay, here we go. Question 1. A law governing a dispute over a broken business promise, which category does that fall under? Is it A, criminal law, B, public law, or C, civil law, specifically the law of contract? And the correct answer is C, civil law. So why is that? Well, remember, this is a dispute between two private parties, two businesses. It's not an offense against all of society, so that rules out criminal law. And because it's all about an allegedly broken promise, it falls right under the umbrella of the law of contract. Question 2 for you. The rules that tell you the specific steps for how to file a lawsuit. What are those an example of? Is it A, substantive law, B, procedural law, or C, common law? The correct answer here is B, procedural law. This is that perfect example of the what versus the how. Your right to sue someone in the first place, that's substantive. But all the rules about how you actually do it, the forms you need to file, the deadlines you have to meet, that's all procedural. All right, last question. I want you to think back to that ethics matrix. Making an unauthorized copy of copyrighted software, even if it's just for your own personal backup, is an act that is A, ethical and legal, B, unethical and not legal, or C, ethical but not legal. And the answer is C. This one is tricky, but so important. Your intention feels ethical, of course. You just want to back up in case your computer crashes. But the law, in this case, the contract or license agreement you agreed to, is crystal clear. If it says you can't make copies, then the act is not legal, putting it squarely in that ethical but not legal box. And really, this all comes down to one final crucial takeaway. If you remember one thing, remember this. Law tells you what you can do. Ethics tells you what you should do. And for anyone working in tech today, knowing the difference between those two, well, that's everything.